Every once in a while, a new studio introduces a brand new game that catapults into the collective consciousness. In February 2016, Firewatch was that game. Campo Santo was formed by Telltale Games alumni, and they brought their knowledge of adventure games with them. Led by Sean Vanneman and Jake Rodkin, the company developed their first property, Firewatch, which was set in the scenic Shoshone National Forest. Firewatch is a slow, atmospheric, story-driven game that rewards players for their curiosity. It became a million-plus seller and landed accolades such as the best indie game by the Golden Joystick Awards. This is the Firewatch Iceberg Explained, and this is your spoiler warning before we dig deep into Delilah's secrets. Firewatch was developed by Campo Santo, a studio set up by former Telltale Games staff. As a writer and designer, Sean Vanneman worked on games such as Tales of Monkey Island and Wallace and Gromit. He became renowned for being the director and lead writer on Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1. Jake Rodkin worked on Telltale games such as Sam and Max, Tales of Monkey Island and Jurassic Park. He was the co-project lead on their most successful game, The Walking Dead. Firewatch is played from a first-person perspective, so most of the lead character's body is not seen during the game. Art director for Firewatch, Ollie Moss, revealed what Firewatch would have looked like in third person, and it is, as you can see, kind of a nightmare. There are two main characters in the narrative of Firewatch: Henry, the newbie Firewatcher who serves as our lens into the Wyoming wilderness. The second main character takes the form of the faceless Delilah, who we get to know throughout the game via walkie-talkie. She's a character that Henry never meets, not even one time. Henry had a dog in his previous life, and the player is given a rare opportunity to change the game by picking the dog's name. Henry speaks about the dog during the game and will address him according to your choice. Choices are limited in Firewatch. There are not a lot of opportunities to change the narrative of the game, and the choices aren't branching. During the game's introduction, the player is prompted to define Henry's backstory, which can alter some of the dialogue but primarily has no effect on the game. The game is set in the Shoshone National Forest in the Wyoming wilderness. The year is 1989 and references are made to the Yellowstone fires in 1988. The wildfires in 1988 were the largest in Yellowstone's history, and they burned for several months. Because of this, new policies were introduced to allow natural fires to burn under controlled conditions, which has been an excellent tactic in reducing the overall spread of fires. Much of Henry's backstory revolves around his wife, Julia. Their history together is revealed to the player throughout the game. At 41 years of age, she developed dementia. When her condition worsened, her family took her back to Australia to receive care. Henry then takes up the Firewatch position to escape the pain of this trauma. After the antagonist, Ned Goodwin, destroys the Wapiti station, the damage results in a fire that spreads to the forest. This fire eventually joins with the earlier June fire, which leads to the massive forest fire, an emergency evacuation order that takes us to the end of the game. Firewatch is a game with limited gameplay and is considered by many to be a walking simulator similar to Gone Home and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. The game's appeal is the immersion, atmosphere, and narrative-driven mystery. During the course of the game, you pick up a camera that you can use to stop and take pictures of anything you like. The Shoshone National Forest is a picturesque setting. For anyone who wants a keepsake, they can take a quick snap. If you do, you'll get to see your pictures as they are displayed during the game's credits. You'll only see stock footage if you don't use the camera during your playthrough. In Henry's Tower, there are a few things the player can interact with. The one with the most meaning is Henry's wedding ring, which he has taken off and left on the side. As the story is told, we learn about Henry and his wife's troubles before he decides to disconnect from the world. It's an emotional story, and players have the option of determining whether Henry should put the ring back on or not. Although this choice doesn't affect the game's story, it gives the player a little agency within the game. The game was designed so that the player could not die. Although there are moments where the stakes are high, the developers decided not to include any ways to die during the game. Players can navigate the game world free from the worry that an elk will take them down. Pork Pond is an area of the forest that Henry visits. During a conversation with Delilah, she reveals that the sign is often stolen. Henry comments that this could be because of the sexual connotations of the name. However, when Henry arrives at Delilah's tower at the end of the game, the sign can be seen amongst her things, confirming that she is in fact one of the thieves. While Henry is traversing the forest, he might stumble across a turtle in multiple instances. Some players may never notice the turtle, but he can actually be adopted by Henry and taken back to his tower if they do. Henry can name the turtle something funny, like Turt Reynolds. At the end of the game, when Henry reaches Delilah's tower, if you look around, you'll find a drawing that she's done of our intrepid adventurer. The design changes are based on your communication with her during the game. This neat feature adds a level of replayability to the game for completionists. Campo Santo, the company behind Firewatch, was acquired by Valve in 2018, and the company has been all but shut down since then. Before the acquisition, they were working on a spiritual sequel to the game called In the Valley of the Gods. In typical Valve fashion, the game was shelved and nothing has been heard about the game since. The developers were redeployed to work on other Valve properties such as Half-Life Alyx and Dota 2. A Ford dealership developed an email ad campaign that stole artwork from Firewatch. The dealership, based in Massachusetts, used the images for their Freedom Sale event, which was aimed at outdoorsy types. You know, the kind of people that might like to wander around Shoshone National Forest. The dealership claims that the image was sourced from a wallpaper website, even though a quick reverse image search would reveal the copyright. A lesson learned, I'm sure. Evidence in the game suggests that Delilah may have a drinking problem. During the visit to her tower, empty tequila bottles can be found. Some dialogue also backs this up when she admits to being drunk when she first contacts Henry. However, the game developers have stated outright that she is not an alcoholic. The game contains several references to other media, including a sweatshirt for one University of Eastern Colorado. If that sounds familiar, it's not because it's a real university that turns you down, it's actually a fictional location from The Last of Us. Henry and Delilah even comment that they don't think the university is real. The camera that Henry finds during the game already has 6 pictures that feature none other than antagonist Ned and his son Brian. Henry finds the camera in an unknown backpack, but it actually belonged to the already deceased Brian. Find and access the old cabin near Beartooth Point on either free mode or during the story. Head downstairs and you'll see a stove that you can open. Open it up and nothing will happen. Return later, and when you open it, a sneaky raccoon will jump out and attack Henry. Despite not having a changeable narrative, Firewatch does actually have an alternative ending that not many players will experience. At the end of the game, Henry is being evacuated as a fire rips through the forest. The player must direct Henry onto a helicopter before it flies away to the end of the game. But what happens if you don't do that? Well, the helicopter will fly away without Henry, and the credits will roll. His fate will be left with a big question mark over it. Does he perish in the fire, or somehow fight his way through? Faces are hard to come by in Firewatch. Almost no one has one outside of the few people Henry sees via picture. That's because Henry doesn't come in close contact with another person until the end of the game. The firefighter that helps to airlift Henry has a face. He has Henry's face. This was a cost-saving tactic to save the developers from creating another face model. Another reference some players may have missed is one of the most famous walking simulators out there. Inside Cache 307, players can find a book titled The Accidental Savior, written by Terence L. Greenbrier. This is a nod to Gone Home, which takes place in the Greenbrier residence. Developers of both games have concluded that the games share a fictional universe. The Wapiti research station is fenced off for the majority of the game. When Henry eventually trespasses into the area, he discovers that Ned Goodwin has taken over the now abandoned research station. The actual original purpose of the building was to track the movements of elk within the forest. When Firewatch was ported onto the Nintendo Switch, the developers included an Easter egg only available on that platform. Once you finish the game, you'll unlock free roam mode. In this mode, you can get a hidden N64 cartridge for the fictional game Forest 64. Once you have the game, you can insert the cartridge into the console near the demonic-looking Forest Burn statue. Now you'll be able to play a minigame. Firewatch inspired a 14-year-old kid named Jack so much that he joined the Forest Fire Lookouts Association, becoming their youngest member ever. He's visited over 200 of these structures, with many of them predating the United States Forest Service itself. His love for the history of fire watching led him to become a tour guide for towers in New Hampshire's Belknap Range. In 2021, Jack revealed his intentions to pursue a career in conservation. Two of the only people Henry ever sees with his own eyes are Chelsea and Lily on day one. The drunk teenagers were skinny dipping at Janesy Lake when Henry came to break up the party. The girls are only seen in the distance, so instead of creating specific models for them, the developers just used the female base mesh, a free game asset. Players can find a hidden tape during the game or on free mode. It's a tricky one to locate, but once you do, you are treated to a song about Shoshone, first written and sung by Chris Remo, who was responsible for the music in Firewatch. Despite being set in a popular national forest within the Wyoming wilderness, there is never anyone around. Henry is either very good at evading people, or something sinister has happened to the population outside of the forest. Henry is in the forest for months and never bumps into another living soul on the various walking paths he takes. What is the future of Campo Santo? It's unclear right now. The only thing the company has tweeted are about Firewatch being added to Game Pass and retweeting Young Jack's announcement that he's preparing for a career in conservation. Will Valve ever let them work on another game like Firewatch? Or will fans be deprived of the true original concept once more? You tell me. Drop a comment below. What do you think the future of Campo Santo is? Are you a fan of Firewatch? How do you feel about Valve just never ever returning to properties? And if you are a fan of the Icebergs or narrative adventures, consider dropping us a subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we will see you next time.